Melissa Henson is back, and she's a senior policy advisor for media and culture for Concerned Women for America, the largest public policy women's organization dedicated to promoting biblical values and constitutional principles in public policy. Concerned Women for America is urgently asking parents, asking everybody, I think, calling all warriors, this is your chance, because you're always asking me every day, what can I do? This is it. And filing an FCC comment by May 22nd about why TV programs should alert parents to LGBTQ content in shows, especially those targeted to children. Now, we say parents, Melissa, but it can really be grandparents, right? It can be anybody who wants to weigh in on this. We need all hands on deck, correct?
That's right. It can be anybody who's concerned about the accuracy of the ratings. And let's face it, if you go to the grocery store, you're probably like me. You take the package down off the shelf, you look at the ingredients list, and if you see something on there that you don't want to feed your family, you put it back on the shelf and you know to look for something else. Choosing television programming should work on exactly the same principle. We're not saying, we're not offering judgment about whether this content is better than that content. We just want to know what's there so that we can choose what's right for us and for our families. Because every family is different and every family has different needs or sensitivities. If you turn on Amazon Prime, for example, sometimes you'll see a warning about flashing lights in case you have somebody in your home who suffers from seizures. It's not saying the flashing lights are good or bad. It's just saying they're here. This is something you should be aware of so that you can make the best choice for your family.
I already know, Melissa, that warriors will say to me, this isn't happening yet. I'm like, no, it's common sense, but it's not happening. Let me mention the website also, concernedwomen.org. Again, all the information will be in the body of this video, how you can file your comment, but we'll get to that later. I want to start with, tell us a little bit about Concerned Women for America, the organization itself, what it stands for, what it's doing. It's been around for a while. Just give us a little bit about that.
Yeah, well, Concerned Women for America is, as you said in the introduction, the nation's largest public policy organization, really focusing on women, and it's a biblical organization. So we come from a Christian point of view and a conservative point of view. So just to get that sort of out in front. So that's where we're approaching these issues from that perspective. From a biblical perspective and from the perspective of what concerns women, especially mothers and grandmothers and people who are responsible for the care and upbringing of young children.
Yeah. I'm just going to say this, Melissa. I feel like, I don't like all these different labels. Conservative, I think it's like common sense. It's like just things that are good for our kids and our families. But that's me saying it kind of thing. I want to ask you about why now has the FCC, they didn't do it before, thank goodness they're doing it now, this moment across America. There's a lot of children's issues going on, a lot of talk going on, whether it's legislation, safety, just a lot of buzz about different things. Tell us why now, because tell us a little bit about the research that you uncovered in order to facilitate what's happening right now.
Right. Well, I think a lot of families were really caught off guard, frankly. Last October, I think it was the Twitter account Libs of TikTok, started posting video clips of characters in children's programs talking about gender identity or talking about being non-binary or being transgender. And I think many, many parents were completely gobsmacked. They were just completely shocked that programs that are created for, intended for, and marketed to very young children would contain such divisive themes and content, because this is not something that most families with young children have bought into. Frankly, they talk in terms of 80-20 issue. This is an 80-20 issue. 80% of the public think that this kind of content has no place in children's programming. And yet here it is. 41% of TVG-rated shows on Netflix, for example, contain these kinds of themes. 41% of TVY7 rated programs on Netflix contain these kinds of themes. And it's not isolated to Netflix, although, CWA, in December, we published a study focusing on Netflix because that was sort of where the controversy erupted. And a lot of people welcome Netflix into their homes because they feel like it gives them more control and autonomy over the content. But even so, they were not aware of how much of this is going on in children's programming. And it's not labeled and it's not disclosed up front. So if you're looking at the rating and you see a title that you recognize like Strawberry Shortcake or My Little Pony or Magic School Bus, you might assume that it's okay for your kids because this content is not disclosed.
Yeah, Melissa, I'm still getting over Cuties, and that was years ago. Do you remember Cuties? That was in Netflix, and
Yeah.
we all talked about that and exposing kids and exploitation. And we've also spoken over the years about a lot of this content we know adults are watching because they're watching the kids in these shows. And you pointed out like Strawberry Shortcake. We think of the old versions of perhaps Strawberry Shortcake, but they've taken everything and retooled everything. What do you think? Answer this however you see fit, whatever you want to say about this. Why do you think they are doing this at Netflix? And as you pointed out, there are other streamers and things like that, but Netflix seems to kind of be at the top of the list of, in my opinion, a lot of this content.
Yeah.
What do you think their agenda is?
Well, I think it has been observed that the entertainment industry is completely captured by a particular ideology, and they seem to be pretty aggressive in promoting this particular ideology. And Netflix in particular, published a study where they were bragging about LGBTQ representation in Netflix programming, and not specifically their children's programming, but across the platform. They're boasting about how inclusive they are, how much representation they have of the LGBTQ community in their programming. So this is an identity that Netflix has certainly fully embraced, and they are running with it.
And it's interesting because you point out 80-20, right? I mean, I'm not an expert like you, Melissa. It's probably higher because I don't know anybody who really wants this kind of content, thinking about Strawberry Shortcake or something. And then we've got, Transberry or one of those characters that, and having, a 4 or 5-year-old then question, their mother, their father, like, what is this? And then that opens up all of that, like how we have to prepare people for this. So let me ask you something. So we're in 2026. So how did the entertainment, I'll use entertainment, how the entertainment industry, how did they end up largely controlling all of this? So we're at this point right now. Do we know how this happened?
Well, when in 1996, Congress passed the Telecommunications Act of 1996, and that was the first major update to American telecommunications law since the 1930s. So for 60 years, the television industry, which was virtually non-existent in 1934, cable television, mobile devices, all these burgeoning industries in 1996 were being governed by this regulatory framework that was really created for radio and landline telephones and not much else, in those early days of the 20th century. And now, going back to the 1996 Act. So what they did when they passed that bill was there was a section in there that provided for the creation of the television rating system. But it had this fatal flaw, which is that it ceded too much control to the entertainment industry. So basically what they said was, we'll give you a chance to come up with a rating system, and the Federal Communications Commission will take a look at it, and they'll either give it a thumbs up or a thumbs down. And if they give it a thumbs up, then there's nothing more to be done. Well, the FCC gave a thumbs up to the rating system that the entertainment industry developed. But they also put themselves in charge of oversight. So think about it this way. When Pfizer develops a new drug, it has to be independently reviewed and tested. and then it has to be approved by the Food and Drug Administration. When a television network creates a new television program, they decide what the program should be rated, and then they decide whether they rated it appropriately. There's no independent body that's reviewing it and saying, hey, that's not quite right, or maybe that should be marketed to an older audience, or maybe that's not quite suitable for a 5 or 6 year old.
So, Melissa, are you saying like okay, I don't want to sound dumb, but I think I'm going to sound dumb, Melissa. Where are the parents at the table? Like when we do focus groups on various things, like we have that demo, or we have those parents, or we have, the kids, whatever. We have them in the room to give us feedback and to give us. There's nobody there.
No, there's, I think right now, like 18 companies basically on the Television Oversight Monitoring Board. And it consists of Disney, A&E Networks, Paramount, it's about 2/3 of it is entertainment companies, and then their lobbyists. So the the NCTA is on there, the National Association of Broadcasters is on there, the Motion Picture Association of America is on there. So the entertainment companies and their lobbyists are represented. But they're, folks like you and me, we don't have a seat at the table. And that's part of what this FCC review is trying to examine and hopefully correct.
Yes, and it will correct. We're going to stay in the positive with this one. Well, you know what that sounds like? A criminal cartel in the entertainment business, a cabal, or something. They're all deciding everything for themselves. Let me ask you something. First of all, for our warriors listening, explain the lobbyist a little bit, like how that word lobbyist and how it fits into what we're talking about. I want everybody to understand, because I've had a lot of people say to me, "Oh, Lynn, you mentioned the word lobbyist a lot. I don't know. I don't even know what that means."
Well, usually, for example, it's like a trade association that represents the interests of the entertainment industry on Capitol Hill. So, you and I are free to visit our congressman if we happen to be in DC. Well, these entertainment companies have highly paid, highly compensated attorneys and huge multi-million-dollar budgets to pay for people to go and be constantly in the ears of our elected representatives to make sure that their viewpoint prevails. And very often, I've been to meetings where I've spoken to staffers and found out that they just got back from a junket paid for by, the cable industry or something else. So they have substantial budgets and they spend that money pretty freely in order to wield influence on Capitol Hill.
Yeah, it's that old money talking again. Let me ask you something, Melissa. We're talking about streaming. We mentioned Netflix. What about broadcast TV? There are different rules for broadcast TV from these streamers? Yes. Yeah. And explain that a little bit. Why? Because we saw the writing on the wall 15 years ago, at least I did, working in the background in entertainment, like this was going to be the future, streaming. Right. I guess it was just runaway train that nobody stepped in to correct. Yeah. And we didn't really know where it was all going right at the time. Everything's happening so fast. But why are there different rules for streamers than for broadcast TV?
Well, so the objection that is frequently put forward is that, the First Amendment grants, blanket free speech rights to anybody, any entity. Congress should not be interfering in any way. But the courts have ruled that because broadcast networks use common good, a public resource, and that is broadcast airwaves, they're not owned by an individual entity or an individual company. We sort of collectively own the broadcast airwaves. So it's a public resource, sort of like, a river or right. Parkland or something like that. It's there for the common good. And because it is a public resource, it can be regulated. Cable is treated differently from broadcast television. So broadcast television is bound by what they call broadcast decency laws. And the broadcast decency laws basically say that you cannot air content that is sexually graphic, that is exceedingly profane, before the 10 o'clock hour, because you have a substantial number of children in the viewing audience. And that's put very, very simply, sort of what broadcast decency laws stipulate. Cable, because they use privately owned cable lines to deliver the content into your home, they're really not even subject to broadcast decency laws. But cable companies historically have relied on advertiser support. And so even if they're not bound by broadcast decency laws, very often advertisers will keep them in check, because a lot of companies don't want their brand to be associated with something that's very controversial. So you think about, the companies with the biggest advertising budgets, your Procter and Gamble's and your Walmart's, they don't want their content, or they don't want their ads appearing alongside, explicit sexual content or graphic nudity or anything like that. So they will constrain the behavior of these cable companies. But streaming video it's like the Wild West. Yeah. Because there's no regulatory authority that governs them. They're not using a broadcast airwaves, a public resource. They're not even using these privately owned cable lines. They're using, very often satellite or the fiber optics or other methods of delivery that is outside of the jurisdiction of Federal Communications Commission or any federal agencies right now.
Out of control. Let me ask you something. I run across a lot, I'm sure you do too, a lot of pushback with, oh, well, it's up to the parents. They should monitor. We come across this in, legislation. We come across this with everything. What do you have to say about that statement?
Yeah. Well, I try hard to be a perfect mom, but I'm not. And
nobody is.
And if I see TVY, there are certain assumptions that I make when I see TVY. I'm not going to assume that it's going to have LGBTQ content. And I was probably more conscious, because of what I do for a living. I probably was more conscientious than the average parent in choosing content for my child, and yet things still slip through the cracks. And you can try to mitigate the harm by having thoughtful conversations. But once something has been seen, you can't unsee it. You can't put that genie back in the bottle. And even the best intentioned parent, sometimes
can't.
Yeah. And there's also the fact that we are doing battle against a multi-billion-dollar industry that is dead set on pushing its own particular agenda and subverting the will and wishes of parents. So even if you are 100% on top of things and you are the best mom in the world and you are not allowing even, you don't even subscribe to these streaming services, you don't even own a television set, even if you're doing all of that, at some point your child is going to leave the house and they're going to be talking to little Billy who lives down the street, whose mom isn't watching what he's consuming. And he's going to be telling your son, little Johnny or little Janie, about what he saw on Netflix the night before. So I think it's really incumbent on all of us to ensure a safe and sound media environment, not just for our own children, but for all children.
Yeah, I'm glad we're really talking about this, Melissa, because most parents are so busy, so overwhelmed, trying to work. I'm always saying this, just trying to get through the day, trying to put food on the table, pay the bills, right? Take care of the kids. Then it's 11 o'clock at night. We don't have time to sit and screen every single program that we see a rating on, right? Yeah. Because parents will say to me, why would they rate it like that?
Right.
And then we have to explain what we're explaining today, right? They're just rating themselves, right? But nobody has time to do any of that. And they take full advantage knowing that and push back with that, blaming the parents. That's going around a lot. Like, really blaming the parents for everything? Yeah, really, with everything. Okay, now let's get into this May 22nd. Fill us in about what you need everybody to do, because we're calling all warriors. What we need to do. I know I'm going to, again, have everything in the body of the video for everybody to read and click on and all that. But tell us a little bit more about this.
Yeah. So the Federal Communications Commission has opened a public comment period so that we can let our voices be heard, so that we can weigh in on this issue and share our frustrations or share our concerns, demand a seat at the table in determining how content should be labeled. But this comment period ends on May 22nd. So it's really, really critical. We have now only a little over a week to get those comments into the FCC. So it's really critical to get those comments in. And you don't have to be an expert. You don't have to have a degree in communications law. They want to hear from moms and dads and grandmas and grandpas and everyday citizens. This is who the system is designed for. You're the ones that they want to hear from, and you don't have to be a subject matter expert. Just speak from the heart about what concerns you. And we at CWA, we've tried to simplify the process, make it as easy as possible. So if you go to concernwomen.org, it should be the first thing that you see on the screen. You just click that button. We've already got the docket number filled in. We have a sample letter that you're free to use or edit or modify as you see fit, or you can throw it out and write your own letter from the heart. Whatever you want to do. We want to make it as easy for you to file a comment as possible.
Yeah, it only takes minutes. So again, with warriors asking me, well, what can I do? I don't know what to do. This is the perfect, we're handing it to you. You just do it. So we're going to get everybody as much as we can. We're going to promote it as well all week long. Make sure you get a lot of people weighing in. Let me ask you, Melissa, looking at this broader, I'm going to kind of call it lately a cultural battle. I think that's what's going on. I think with media, kids in general, parental rights, it's all interconnected. Do you think America is finally reaching a point where they're really beginning to demand change? They're finally waking up a little bit more than even, I'm going to say, a year ago, and coming out and talking about things more and wanting to be part of it, and again, demanding change. What do you think?
I think so. And I think this is, for a long time, we've been bullied into silence.
Yes.
We've been dismissed as being hateful or bigoted or, whatever other nasty words you want to ascribe. But at the same time, there are children who were pressured into gender denying care, who are now regretting it and now find that their bodies are permanently scarred, that they're sterile. They will never be able to have children because of these medical interventions that were totally unnecessary. Their parents were bullied into complying with it, even though it was medically unnecessary, because they said, would you rather have a living daughter or a dead son? These kinds of messages that have been completely debunked. We know now that there's a significant body of data that shows that there often comorbidities along with mental health implications that need to be addressed. And there's just so much data piling up now showing the harm that this ideology has inflicted upon a generation of kids. And I think parents are starting to wake up and realize just how dangerous and misguided it is. And, a lot of times it starts with the media our kids consume. So many social ills can be tracked back to the media our kids consume, because a lot of it is designed to sow confusion and, break up families, create addiction. There's a whole host of negative behaviors that are connected to media consumption.
Yeah, absolutely. What else would you like to share with us that we should be aware of, if you want to, what you're working on? Well, whatever. Any final kind of thoughts for us?
I think right now the most important thing is to get those comments in before next Friday. That's the deadline for filing comments. And then there will be a 30-day, what they call a reply comment period. But that first round comments is really, really critical. So I would just strongly encourage folks to go to concernwomen.org and click on the button and file your comment. And like I said, we try to take all the guesswork out and make it as easy as possible for you.
Well, Melissa Henson, we are going to help you get everybody to sign on with their comments and be part of this. You've done all the work for us, so you made it easy for us. Thank you. Always thank you for all of your sharing your voice, sharing things that are really, really important. Take actions, things we need to be made aware of. Again, everybody, concernedwomen.org. The information will be in the body of the video. And Melissa, you know what I have to say? I know you a long time now. Senior policy advisor for media and culture. You truly are a warrior, and thank you for always being at the forefront and sharing, because I frankly don't know about a lot of things that you're talking about. So it's just a joy for me to be able to take your work, share your voice, and get our warriors to help with all of this. So thank you, because education and awareness, that's it, you know.
And I always appreciate your willingness to be
Of
there on
course.
the battlefront.
And we will definitely speak again. So Melissa Henson, thank you for joining us. Let's talk soon.
Thank you.